What happens when Jennifer Hudson stops being polite and starts asking Common the questions everyone else has been too afraid to ask? Imagine the cameras rolling, the lights glowing, and Common sitting comfortably across from Jennifer, thinking this is going to be another relaxed celebrity conversation. They talk about music, acting, success, and life. Everything seems normal, until Jennifer suddenly changes the subject. She looks at him, pauses for a second, and asks, "So, what really happened with your love life?" That one question could instantly change the entire energy in the room. Because Common has been connected to some very high-profile relationships over the years, and every time romance enters the conversation, fans start paying attention. People want to know what happened behind the headlines, why certain relationships ended, what Common learned from heartbreak, and whether he has finally figured out what he really wants. But this time, imagine Jennifer isn't satisfied with a safe answer. She wants the truth behind the story. And if Common tries to dodge the question, Jennifer might simply smile and ask again. Because sometimes the second question is the one that gets the real answer. Think about it. How many times have we watched celebrities sit on podcasts and give the same carefully prepared answers? We're happy. We're focused on ourselves. Everything is good. But what happens when the interviewer refuses to stop there? Jennifer could ask Common something much more uncomfortable. Do you regret the way some of your relationships ended? Now suddenly, this isn't just a conversation about romance. It's a conversation about choices, mistakes, and consequences. Because every relationship leaves something behind. Sometimes it's happiness. Sometimes it's heartbreak. Sometimes it's a lesson you don't understand until years later. And when you're famous, those lessons don't happen privately. Your relationships are watched, photographed, discussed, and dissected by millions of people. A normal disagreement can become a headline. A missing photograph can become a breakup rumor. A quiet weekend can become an internet investigation. And when the relationship finally ends, everybody wants to know one thing: who walked away first? But Jennifer could flip the question completely. Instead of asking who walked away, she could ask Common, "Why did you let it go?" Now that's spicy, because there is a huge difference between losing someone and choosing to let someone go. Sometimes people fight desperately to save a relationship. Other times they realize that holding on is actually making things worse. Maybe the love was still there, but the timing wasn't right. Maybe the careers were pulling them in different directions. Maybe two people simply wanted different futures. Or maybe there were things happening privately that the public never saw. And that's the part people are always curious about. The public sees the beginning. They see the photographs. They see the smiles. They see the red carpets. But they rarely see the difficult conversations happening after the cameras disappear. Jennifer could then turn up the pressure with one question. Was there ever a moment when you knew it was over? Imagine Common sitting there for a second without answering. That pause alone would have the internet exploding. Because people don't just listen to what celebrities say. They listen to how long they take to say it. They watch their facial expressions. They notice when someone suddenly becomes serious. They analyze every little pause and every change in tone. Of course, none of those things prove what someone is thinking or feeling, but that's exactly why celebrity interviews can become so addictive. One sentence can create 1,000 theories. And then Jennifer could ask something even more dangerous. What did you do wrong? That's not the kind of question most people expect from a friendly interview. But it could be the most revealing. Because it's easy to talk about what someone else did wrong. It's much harder to admit your own mistakes. Maybe Common would say he wasn't always the best communicator. Maybe he would admit that his career sometimes demanded too much of his attention. Maybe he would say that he learned too late how important emotional availability really is. Or maybe he would insist that sometimes relationships simply reach their natural ending. Whatever the answer, the conversation would suddenly become much more personal. And here's where things get really interesting. Jennifer could ask him whether fame has changed the way he loves. Because imagine trying to fall in love when every person you date could become a headline. Imagine wanting privacy while millions of people are searching for clues about your relationship. Imagine having an argument with someone you care about and knowing that if you walk outside at the wrong moment, a camera could capture your expression and turn it into a story. Fame doesn't just put your career under a microscope. Sometimes it puts your emotions there too. And maybe Common has had to learn that the hard way, but Jennifer wouldn't have to stop there. She could ask the question that would probably make fans lean closer to their screens. What are you actually looking for now? Because after enough relationships, enough heartbreak, and enough public attention, priorities change. Maybe the things that once seemed important don't matter anymore. Maybe excitement isn't enough. Maybe attraction isn't enough. Maybe Common now wants peace. Maybe he wants someone who understands the pressure of his lifestyle. Maybe he wants friendship first. Maybe he wants a relationship where both people can be completely honest without worrying about what the internet will say. And then comes the question nobody expects. Are you afraid of falling in love again? That's where the conversation could become emotional. Because heartbreak can change people. Some people become stronger. Some become more guarded. Some stop trusting easily. And some become determined not to make the same mistake twice. Maybe Common would say that he's not afraid of love. He's simply more careful now. Maybe he'd say that experience has taught him to recognize what is healthy and what isn't. Or maybe he'd admit that opening, "Your heart always carries a risk, Jennifer," could then lean into the emotional side and ask, "Do you still believe in forever?" That question sounds romantic, but it's actually brutal. Because forever sounds beautiful when you're in love. But after a few painful endings, forever can start to sound like a promise nobody can guarantee. Maybe Common still believes in it. Maybe he believes forever is built one day at a time. Maybe he thinks people shouldn't obsess over how long a relationship lasts, but instead focus on how they treat each other while they're together. That answer could tell us more about his current mindset than any list of exes ever could. And then Jennifer could hit him with the question everyone would be waiting for. What's the biggest thing you regret in love? Imagine the silence. Imagine Common taking a breath before answering. This is where the conversation could go from entertaining to unforgettable. Maybe he regrets not listening enough. Maybe he regrets putting work ahead of personal life. Maybe he regrets allowing outside pressure to influence a relationship. Or maybe he has no regrets at all. But even that would be interesting because it would tell the audience that he stands by the choices he made. The truth is, people aren't obsessed with celebrity relationships simply because they want gossip. They're fascinated because celebrities experience many of the same emotions everyone else does: love, jealousy, insecurity, heartbreak, hope, regret, and the desire to find someone who truly understands them. The difference is that famous people experience those emotions while millions of strangers are watching. That's why Jennifer's questions could hit differently. She wouldn't just be asking about names. She could be asking about the man behind the headlines, and Jennifer could bring up something else that would really get people talking. Do you think you were ready for the relationships you had? That's a dangerous question because sometimes people enter relationships before they're emotionally prepared for what comes next. You can love someone and still not know how to build a lasting relationship with them. You can want commitment and still struggle with vulnerability. You can have good intentions and still make mistakes. And perhaps Common's greatest lessons came not from the relationships that worked perfectly, but from the ones that forced him to confront parts of himself he didn't want to see. Then Jennifer could ask, if you could go back, would you do anything differently? That question could unlock an entire chapter of his past without Jennifer ever mentioning a single name. Maybe he would say yes. Maybe he would say no. Maybe he would simply say that every mistake made him who he is today. And that's where the conversation could become surprisingly relatable. Because who among us hasn't wondered what would happen if we could go back and change one decision? What if we had said something sooner? What if we had stayed? What if we had walked away earlier? What if we had listened? Love is full of those questions, but here's the part that could really send fans into overdrive. Jennifer could ask Common, do you think the person you are today could have saved one of your past relationships? Now that is a question with weight. Because sometimes relationships don't fail because there was no love. They fail because the people involved weren't ready to give each other what they needed. Years later, after growing and changing, people sometimes look back and realize they were different people back then. Maybe Common feels that way? Maybe he doesn't. But if he answered honestly, fans would have plenty to discuss. Then Jennifer could bring the conversation into the present. Are you happy with where your heart is right now? Not are you dating? Not who is the person you're seeing? Just, are you happy? That's a much deeper question. Because you can be single and happy. You can be in a relationship and unhappy. You can have everything professionally and still feel empty personally. And maybe Common has learned that happiness isn't about finding someone to complete you. Maybe it's about becoming comfortable with yourself first. At this point, Jennifer could smile and deliver one final question. What would you tell the person you eventually fall completely in love with? Now the conversation would become almost cinematic. Maybe Common would say he would promise honesty. Maybe he'd promise to communicate. Maybe he'd say he wants a relationship built on friendship and trust. Maybe he'd say that after everything he's experienced, he no longer wants something that simply looks good from the outside. He wants something that feels good when nobody is watching, and that's perhaps the biggest twist in the entire story. After years of public attention, maybe Common isn't searching for the loudest love story. Maybe he's searching for the quietest one. The relationship where there is no need to constantly prove anything. No need to convince the internet. No need to explain every photograph. Just two people who know what they have and don't need the world to validate it. But would Jennifer let him leave it there? Probably not. She could look at him and ask one final, unforgettable question. Do you think you've finally found the love you're looking for? And suddenly everything comes down to that one answer, because that's the real mystery. Not who he dated. Not who broke up with whom. Not what the headlines claimed. The real question is whether Common believes he has learned enough from his past to build something stronger in the future. And if he answered honestly, fans would probably analyze every word. They would replay the clip. They would discuss his expression. They would debate whether he was talking about someone specific. Social media would explode with theories. But here's the important part. Theories are not facts. A pause isn't confirmation. A smile isn't a secret confession. And a vague statement doesn't prove who someone is talking about. Celebrity relationships are complicated enough without turning every moment into evidence. Still, that's exactly why Jennifer Hudson asking Common these questions would make for such compelling television. She could turn a simple celebrity interview into an emotional conversation about love, mistakes, fame, heartbreak, and second chances. Instead of chasing cheap gossip, she could ask questions that make Common think. Instead of demanding names, she could demand honesty. Instead of asking who broke his heart, she could ask what the experience taught him. Because maybe the most interesting thing about Common's romantic journey isn't the women he has dated. Maybe it's the man he became afterward. Every relationship leaves a mark. Every breakup teaches something. Every mistake creates an opportunity to grow. And if Common has truly changed, then his next chapter could look completely different from his past. So now the question goes to you. If Jennifer Hudson had Common sitting across from her and gave you one chance to ask him anything about his love life, his breakups, and his relationship history, what would you ask? Would you ask him who walked away first? Would you ask what he regrets? Would you ask whether fame ruined a relationship? Would you ask if he was ever truly ready for commitment? Or would you go straight for the biggest question of all? Have you finally found the love you've been searching for? Drop your question in the comments because I want to know what you would ask if you were sitting in that studio. And if this story made you curious about what really goes on behind the celebrity headlines, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next conversation could reveal another side of the story we thought we already knew. And remember, the internet may have theories, fans may have opinions, and headlines may move fast, but speculation is not confirmation. Until the people involved speak for themselves, the truth belongs to them. So stay curious, stay tuned, and keep watching. Because when Jennifer starts asking the questions, you never know what answer might come next.